Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another television series review. I'm Stephen Waters, and today we'll be looking at one of the greatest TV shows of all time, one of my personal favorites. Drum roll, please. Today we'll be looking at the TV show Arrow. Now, a quick background check, or a quick brief for the just a bit of history for those who don't know about this show. The TV show Arrow is a superhero drama show full of crime and mystery and action, which ran for 8 seasons from 2012 to 2020. It was developed by Greg Berlanti, Mark Guggenheimer, and Andrew Kreisberg. Now, sorry if any names have been pronounced wrong throughout the video. Of course, the TV show was based on DC Comics' character, the Green Arrow. And this show is it's just great. It just shows that superhero shows can be done in a darker light, has really great storytelling, and was responsible for several spin-offs. The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, and other shows that weren't spin-offs are now a part of this TV show. They're now like part of the same universe, and I loved it. I absolutely loved every minute of the show. It's just really great, and it was a huge hit on TV when it came out, and I just loved watching every episode of this show. How I got into the show was my mum bought the first season on DVD, and I marathoned that. Literally didn't do anything but try to complete the series, and after that I knew I wanted to watch the rest of the show, and of course I always did my best to keep up to date with how the show was, and overall I just loved this show. It was absolutely great all around. Now, the plot of Arrow revolves around Oliver Queen, a playboy who, after being shipwrecked for 5 years, or as he calls it, after 5 years in hell, he has returned to Starling City with one goal: to save his city. However, to do this, he has to be someone else. He has to become something else. And basically, the series had a more interesting plot and structure. For the first 5, now each season had an overarching story, which ended with the cliffhanger, making you come back to the next season to see how it's resolved and the story continue. Here we get introduced, and as a series we get introduced to cast of characters, some huge comic book names, and of course the main stars, recurring characters, and the big bad. Now the big bad was there was a big bad each season, with the exception of season 6, which had arguably 2, and of course season 8, which had none. Overall, great thing, and I liked how each season had an overall structure, storytelling wise. It was really great to do this as we went on through the series. Yeah, and of course for the first 5 seasons we had flashbacks to Oliver's time being shipwrecked, to see how he got these skills and how he became the person who he is. And seasons 7 and 8 we had flash forwards. We get to see how these new cast of characters are doing in the future after Oliver's time. So I really liked that. I absolutely loved how that was done. Yeah. Already great. Already good premise. This show is just great. Now, let's get to the casting. The casting of this show: Stephen Amell as Oliver Queen, aka the Hood, in season 1. Seasons 2 to 3, he is the Arrow. Then seasons 4 and onward, he became Green Arrow. Stephen Amell owned the role. I will admit, it's not a more traditional Green Arrow, but it is very different, and it feels great. Truly does. And of course, he'd be for all 8 seasons. Up next is John Diggle, aka Spartan, portrayed by David Ramsey. Now, as far as I know, this character was created specifically for the show, and I absolutely loved that it was the case. He just absolutely looks. These two, in my opinion, had great chemistry. They had this brotherly relationship. Yeah, I'm trying to really not spoil too much about the characters, as really you just gotta watch the show for these characters' development. Rounding out the main 3 trio of the series is Felicity Smoke, aka Overwatch, You would get portrayed by Emily Bent Richards. Now, she would be present from seasons 1 to 7 and have a guest appearance in season 8. She is just truly fantastic. And I think Felicity 2 was also created for the show. Correct me if I'm wrong, but she was also created for the show. And she's just this fun computer whiz, hot and attractive, and absolutely just has this, unique personality. I absolutely loved, this character overall. Rounding out, the next is Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, portrayed by Colton Hayes, who I happen to know from Teen Wolf. And of course, Willia Holland, aka Thea Queen, aka Speedy. Who, of course, she appeared in, the OC. And yeah, it's just different seeing her in this type of role, but she still owns it. Now, onto Wild Dog, aka Renee, and Curtis, aka Mr. Terrific, portrayed by Rick Gananzol and Echo Kellum. Sorry if these names have been pronounced wrong. I'm really terrible with names. Something I shouldn't really. These two were introduced. Well, Curtis was introduced in season 4, but wouldn't become Mr. Terrific till season 5, and will continue as a main throughout seasons 5, and will continue until season 7, where he would end up leaving, and would get guest appearances in season 8. Wild Dog would continue to appear on the show throughout seasons 5, 6, 7, and 8, and he's a really interesting character. We have, of course, Canary, Black Canary, and another Black Canary, the Canaries, portrayed by Canaries. This Canary is Dinah Drake, introduced in season 5 and continued to reappear throughout the rest of the series. She was portrayed by Dolina Harkovia. Sorry if I'm pronouncing these names wrong. I really don't want that, but that does happen. I do pronounce things wrong. And of course we have Laurel. This Canary is Laurel Lance, portrayed by Cathy Cassidy. She would also would essentially appear throughout the series. She wouldn't become Black Canary till season 3 until a certain event ends the character. She would eventually come back in season 5 as a completely new character, the Black Siren, in season 5, and continue to be a main character throughout the series. Again, very interesting, very different. And of course, we have Sarah Lance, portrayed by Katy Lotz, who appeared in season 2. Few appearances. Had appeared in 2 episodes in season 3. Appeared in season 4 for a few episodes before becoming a main in the spin-off series Legends of Tomorrow, and of course will come back to appear in guest appearances throughout the series' run. We also have William Oliver's son. The younger version was portrayed by a younger and older version portrayed by Jack Moore and Ben Lewis. This William was actually properly appeared, I should say, in season 4, and of course continued in seasons. And of course we have another appearance in season 5, a huge appearance in season 6. He appeared, of course, season 7 and 8. But this version wasn't introduced till season 7. And honestly, these Williams just kept popping up. But the older William actually appeared in the flash forwards bit. Speaking of flash forwards, he will be joined by his half sister, Mia Smoke, portrayed by Catherine McNova. Sorry if these names are pronounced wrong. She appeared in the flash forwards in season 7, but have a huge appearance in more of a prominent appearance in season 8. And as far as I know, she appeared in the TV show The 100. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on that. And of course, we have more cast of characters to even get to. Quentin Lance, portrayed by Paul Blackthorne. Moira Cream, portrayed by Susan Thompson. Where's... Oh. We also have Walter Steele, portrayed by Colin Salmon. Lila, portrayed by Andrew Moira Anderson. Ray Palmer, portrayed by Brandon Ruth, who I happen to know in Superman, and Superman in the as Superman in the movie Superman Returns, I think it was. I definitely know him from that. We also have Robert Queen, portrayed by Jamie Sharandi. Then, of course, we got Evelyn Sharp, aka Artemis, and Ragman, aka Roy Regan, portrayed by Madison McClune and Joe Pinsel. Sorry if these names have been pronounced wrong. Of course, we also have Barry Allen. Barry Allen, aka The Flash, portrayed by Grant Gustin, who of course would be the head on The Flash. Overall, really great cast of characters. Now, there's more characters, more recurring, but I can't really fit them all as it's too time consuming. But just know that some of these are minor characters created specifically for the show for minor roles. Others are huge names in comic books. First off, a character created specifically for the show was Tommy Merlin, Malcolm Merlin's son, and appeared in season 1 and continued to make guest appearances throughout the show's run. And of course, appeared in the very last episode of season 8. And of course, the actor who played Tommy Merlin would later go on to be on Chicago Meds, I think it is, like that. Yeah, so you go to appear on that. And of course, we got other characters that were from the comics in the show, like Anatoly Knyazev, and Danny Brickwell. Well, then we got, Brick. I should say Brick, not Danny Brickwell. Brick, Count Vertigo, the Clark King. Basically, characters that are known in comics, either in general or just characters part of the Green Arrow comics storyline. Overall, so many. I just have no time to name it all. But first off, we're not even done yet. We haven't even got to the villains. Now, each season had a main villain. For season 1, we had Malcolm Merlin, who was Malcolm Merlin, and I happen to know this actor from the Doctor Who series and Torchwood, the revival Doctor Who and Torchwood. He was great. You also have Deathstroke, real name Slade Wilson, another great character, and he was the main villain for season 2. Season 3, we had Ra's al Ghul. Season 4, Damien Dark. He would, of course, later appear as more of a character for Legends of Tomorrow. I honestly found this guy to be a great casting choice. I absolutely love Damien Dark, despite what many fans felt about Season 4, but we'll get to that. Then we have Prometheus. Another, just like Ra's al Ghul, he is a Batman villain. But the character was drastically redesigned for the series, and is arguably the series' most psychopathic lead villain. Now, come to season 6, with Ricardo Diaz, portrayed by... Sorry, I forgot. But basically, Ricardo Diaz and Caden James, both the main villain for season 6. Caden James had the first half of the season as the main, but then Ricardo Diaz would be the main villain for the rest of the series. Ricardo Diaz, aka the Dragon, would be the main villain for the rest of season 6, and would continue to make appearances in season 7. Speaking of season 7, the true main villain for that season is Amiko Queen, portrayed by C. Shimuku. So, Amiko Queen will be the main villain, arguably the main villain in season 7, but she's not really a villain. But this season's about her character arc. I absolutely love her character, and she was another great addition to the series. Now, season 1 is still considered by many to be its greatest season, and it was a really great start. Here we're introduced to Oliver Queen, how he comes home and he starts his vigilante crusade. He starts going after corrupt businessmen who are abusing their position to make money off the people. And I absolutely love the first episode. Here we also get introduced to the dynamics, like his struggle to grace himself back. He has a few demons, not just from his time on the island, but also before he left, as he's done some pretty stupid things. After all, he was a playboy. He was a bit of a jackass. And I just love his, like, how he just interacts with all his friends, his family, and how he builds these relationships. Here, the love interest for this season is actually him trying to sort of fix the relationship with him and Laurel, but Laurel ends up dating Tommy in this season. And of course, the main villain for this season was Malcolm Merlyn, who, well, the plot was to destroy a section of the city known as the Glades to get revenge, as he blames the Glades for the death of his wife. And they were, because he feels like there's no point saving the Glades. It doesn't want to be saved. It needs to be erased and start over. Basically, Malcolm Merlyn is a corrupt businessman, but he's also another character. But he's also an assassin known as the Dark Archer. Now, Malcolm Merlyn continued to make appearances throughout the series, but season 1 truly sets him as a really interesting character, but at the same time, a sympathetic one. You kind of feel bad for the guy, but then you lose that sympathy immediately as soon as he does all these crazy things. And the flashbacks for that main story, I should say, is Oliver Queen stranded on Lian Yu, and he ends up meeting a cast of characters. He meets Yao Fei, Shadow, Slade Wilson, and they would train, and they begin a sort of training a little bit, and he slowly becomes a bit of a man. And as he's doing this, he's also just trying to stop Fires' evil plan to sort of blow up a plane, which could have disastrous effects on the economy. That overall flashback was good, and it helped introduce Oliver as a whole. Now, I won't spoil the cliffhanger, but the cliffhanger is really big and resolves the death of a certain character. And yeah, and here also Oliver is far more brutal and more evil in this season, as in the way, like, he mostly kills. He's almost an animal, but that's partly due to blame to his time being 5 years stranded away. You know, it's just brutal. Come season 2, after the events of that season, Oliver now goes by the name The Arrow, and because of the death of a certain character, he's sworn never to kill. But as he's doing this, he's also trying to really fix, because the city is reeling itself after the events of season 1. And of course, crime has gone to an all-time high. The Arrow is back. And we also get introduced to Sarah Lance's character. Makes a proper first appearance in this season. Though she appeared in season 1, but in that season she was actually portrayed by a completely different character entirely. In this season, as Oliver's trying to build up, trying to be better than he was he also takes Roy Harper under his wing to be a vigilante, a sort of sidekick, partner, train him. And in this season, he has to stop Deathstroke's plan to completely destroy the city as payback for what Oliver did in the past. And flashback time. After a new group of villainous band comes to Lian Yu, Oliver ends up in this. Oliver and Slade and Shadow end up going up against this group of villains led by a Dr. Ivo. And here we get introduced to the prisoners on this boat that has come to the island. And here, Oliver meets Anatoly Knyazev as another interesting casting choice, and another really great character to be introduced in this season. But as we do this, we find out that Slade is slowly, you could say, devolving into a completely different character. Stuff that's completely out, to a new character to what he is in the second season. overall, I just like the grand scale of this. We are here. The season also gives us the first ever, like, the series is known for starting crossovers, and here we get introduced to Barry Allen, and is part of a backdoor pilot to the TV show The Flash, which of course that would play a prominent role in the next season. And of course, during his flashback times, Oliver Queen ends up in Hong Kong at the end of the flashbacks. Now, season 3. Here, the team is in a good place. As Oliver Queen and Roy Harper, now going by the name Arsenal, now as the team in the field. John Diggle, here the team is finally at a good pace. And here you can say that Oliver's in a good place by this time, in a way, in this season. The team is now good, and they are quickly wrapping up the villains like they're going up against this season. But things take it, and Quentin is now captain of Central City Police Department. Here we get introduced to a few more characters this season. First off, we get introduced to Ray Palmer, who ends up taking over Oliver Queen's company. But he's not a bad guy. He doesn't take it out as spy. He takes over the company and plans to go forward in a way to, improve the city after 2 terrorist attacks in the previous season. Here in this season, the main villain is Ra's al Ghul, and after certain events throughout the series, after the death of a very prominent character, Oliver Queen ends up going up against Ra's al Ghul, but Ra's al Ghul instead wants to make him his heir. So what do I feel about this season? Well, seasons for me 1 and 2 were great. Season 1 was slowly opening the more comic book aspects of the show. Season 3, for me, the more realism was slowly fading on me. Now, it's kind of like the kind of thing I felt with like the OC in the review. Seasons 1 and 2 were great, but season 3 I was slowly struggling to watch. But here, this season is also made a comparison of being too much of Batman. I don't get it. Honestly, loved that. And I do get it, as people are starting to feel that Oliver Queen, or at least Arrow, is becoming more like, if they're not doing Batman, if the showrunners can't do Batman, they just get another DC character and make it more of a Batman thing. But I do like how they do some things to dissimilar the two from Green Arrow and Batman. So I kind of liked where that went. And overall, in the flashbacks, we see Oliver's time in Hong Kong, forced to be working with Argus, and all of that. So that was the flashbacks. Overall, this season was pretty good, but compared to the other 2, it felt down a bit. One thing I really liked about this season was when we got introduced to the character Brick, pretty much the mobster, and be a prototype for another main villain to appear in the series. As of course, for the past 2 seasons, we were introduced to more comic book character of the Green Arrow Rogues Gallery. We got introduced to in season 2, we got the Clock King, Bronze Tiger. And season 1, we got China White and Count Vertigo. And yeah, also season 3 will be and season 2 will be the first time there'll be the Suicide Squad, and season 3 would be another Suicide Squad. But also, in this season, John Diggle and Lila get married. Another fun thing. And in season, in this season, we also got introduced to the Atom and another comic book villain from the Green Arrow Rogues Gallery, Cupid. And here we had the first proper Flash and Green Arrow crossover. Proper and all that I found really fun, and it was probably the first one. Now, was the first and would set the stage for many shows to come with the whole big crossover events. It was really great. Season 4. Now, people say this is the worst season, and I will admit Season 4 is perhaps my least favorite entry in the series. After the events of Season 3, Oliver Queen and Felicity are living a normal life. They've left Starling City, now known as Star City, and they just want to leave that whole thing behind them. And of course, John Diggle has become Spartan, Laurel Lance has become the Black Canary, and Thea has become Speedy. But it's clearly this new criminal organization known as Hive, led by Damien Dark, is too much. They need Oliver to come back. They are not making any progress, but due to the events of Season 3, John and Oliver are on shaky terms, and he's not willing to come back. But he kind of has to, and after the first episode, he rechristens himself as the Green Arrow, and he finally accepts that, and his costume in this season looks more like the comics. Now, really, we get more introduced to more comic book characters this season. We got introduced to Anarchy, who is actually a Batman villain, and we had another crossover which also was the backdoor pilot for Legends of Tomorrow. And here we also got introduced to here Sarah Lance and the Atom sort of leave the show to become part of that crossover. Overall, this was just really good. Overall, this season is pretty flawed, in my opinion. Now, the big bad, like I said in the characters, I absolutely love the big bad Damien Dark, but I agree, he just did not fit the show. Overall, Season 4 was becoming out of all the seasons, Season 4 is hands down considered the worst of the series, and for me, it is an absolute chore to get through. Now, I do like how they were trying to update and introduce more of the comic book aspects, but the problem was, the series, it looked too much like the comics and lost a lot of the realism that most fans, when you watch the series, you expect. Season 4 is just hard to watch. And in this season's flashbacks, Oliver Queen does go back to Lian Yu. And this season's more of the mystical side, which for me just feels a bit out of place for Arrow. It feels a bit out of place. Also here we get another crossover with John Constantine. Now, the Constantine TV show was, I think, premiered way before this show did. So I like how they decided to bring the actual actor who played Constantine to this show. And overall, he was really great. I absolutely loved Constantine absolutely in this show. And of course, Constantine, the character, become a huge part of the Arrowverse, and especially in Legends of Tomorrow, in season, I believe it was season 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, at the show's end, overall, this is perhaps a season I wish I could go back to the least, but sadly, that's not the case. Season 4, not really great. After the reception of Season 4, if the series needed to be continued, they really needed to revive itself. So as a result, we had Season 5. Now, for many, Season 5 is considered one of the best seasons of the show, and the reason why, it managed to balance more of the comic book aspects, but somehow make it realism, and it also gave the season almost a reboot in visual feel, which I really love. In this season, Oliver Queen is forced to recruit a completely new team of superheroes. The original new recruits are Wild Dog, Mr. Terrific, and Artemis, and then he would eventually recruit Ragman, as he's recruiting this team to take down this crime lord Tobias Church, another character's created specifically for the show. But as he's doing this, there's also a vigilante running around by the name of Prometheus. Now, this villain is pretty much, well, the villain itself is apparently from Oliver's past, and this whole season, the villain is a complete callback to the first season. Now, I'm not going to reveal who the identity of this guy is, as you really got to watch. And, yeah. And also in this season, we got introduced to Oliver being mayor of Star City, and the criminal elements he's now forced to deal with. Here we also get introduced to another comic book character, Vigilante, who I found to be really fun and enjoyable. enjoyable. And overall, we had arguably in season 5, we had perhaps the biggest crossover of the time with the whole alien invasion, which I found to be great. Here we also got introduced to a new character who later joined the series, Dinah Drake, as her interpretation of the Black Canary. I, to this day, love the character and the overall introduction. Overall, this season just felt great. The atmosphere, everything was on point this season, and it really rejuvenated energy into the show. This is perhaps one of the best seasons ever, and was followed by another personal favorite season of mine. Season 6. Now, Season 6 continued the story after Season 5. Also, in Season 5, the flashbacks is Oliver in Russia, and we have the connection with Oliver Queen, with the Russian mob, and the friendship between Anatoly Knyazov and that continue. Here in this season, Oliver Queen and his team go up against the big bad for the first half of the season, Caden James, another character created specifically for the series. And here, Caden James recruits a team of criminals to be a part of this cabal. He recruits Anatoly Knyazov and his Russian guys, Ricardo Diaz and his criminal organization. He also recruits Black Siren, who was introduced in Season 5 as an enforcer. Caden James has his number 2 guy, and then of course Vigilante, another great character. And here his identity gets revealed and has a sort of connection to Diana Drake. Here in this season really is also Oliver. This season also focuses on Oliver being a father and Oliver's continued relationship with Felicity, which we were introduced to in Season 3. We were really there in Season 4. And then the relationship was sort of kind of on the tier, and then of course its resurrection in Season 5, and here by Season 6 the relationship continues. We have another crossover, Earth X, the whole big crossover, and of course this also ends with Oliver and Felicity getting married, another great aspect. And another thing I also loved about this season was, of course, Ricardo Diaz's turn as the big bad of the remaining season. After Oliver's actions resulting in Black Canary, Wild Dog, and Mr. Terrific forming their own superhero team, the Outsiders and Oliver Queen's original Team Arrow still together to take on this new threat. Here in this season, it's really big. Not really big, as in, like, the villain plot for this season is pretty different. Others had major things. Damien wanted to destroy the world and create a new civilization. Season 3, Ra's al Ghul wants Oliver to be his apprentice. Well, no, his heir. Deathstroke wants to destroy Star City. Michael Merlin wants to destroy the Glades. He and Prometheus just wanted to destroy Oliver Queen, everything he stood for. This season, Ricardo Diaz wants to take over the city and destroy the Green Arrow, both the image and then kill him. And I like how he thought this out. He's been planning this, but then the character's plan, as it falls apart, his mental state falls apart. He's now a huge crime lord. He has his own crime syndicate, and he's now a member of one of the country's biggest crime syndicates, the Quadrant. Overall, Season 6 for me is one of my favorites, especially the latter half with Oliver against Ricardo Diaz. I absolutely find this whole season to be absolutely great. And here it also ends with the biggest bombshell, and this is the first season without flashbacks. This whole season is absolutely great. It's absolutely fantastic. And I just love this season. Even though it's sort of divided, I'm one of those who love this season, and I'm one of those who loves Ricardo Diaz. Ricardo Diaz is my favorite villain on the show. And that's weird, considering others are better. At least Ricardo Diaz, I can admit, he would definitely be in my top 3. Who knows, maybe one day I get to do top 10 Arrow villains. This whole season is just fantastic. And it always will be. And after the dramatic ending of that season, we were introduced to Season 7. Definitely one of its greatest seasons. In this season, after the events of Season 6, Oliver Queen is in prison. There's this prison arc, and of course the city struggling to survive with Oliver gone and the Team Arrow completely disbanded. This city turns into complete chaos. Crime has returned to an all-time high because it turns out crime was always down with the Green Arrow's presence. With Oliver gone, and spoiler alert, his identity revealed to the world, the criminals are running amok and no one's doing anything about it. There's a new mayor who honestly doesn't care, who cares more about her image, the image of Star City, rather than actually helping the city. Also in this season is also Oliver finding almost redemption and becoming a completely different character. Here, Oliver really begins to mature as an adult, as a maternal figure, as a parenthood. Also in this season, we get introduced to a new Green Arrow, who is revealed to be Emiko Queen. Is it Emiko Queen? Yeah, Emiko Queen. And although she's the main villain of the season, you could argue she is at the same time not really a villain, or at least not what you would expect from a villain of any superhero show, which again, I really like. Overall, this was just a really great and fantastic, another great season. After Season 6 was a bit wobbly, Season 7 was really on a strong point. For me, by Season 5 and onward, the show was still strong for me to watch. After Season 3 and 4 were a bit wonky, Season 5 rejuvenated my love of the show, but Season 7 continued to be great. Other great things that were introduced in this season were the flash forwards, where we get to this most, apocalypse version of Star City, with how it's been, how it's in despair and how bad that is. Here we also get introduced to the older version of William, and we get introduced to Black Star, aka Mia Queen, Oliver and Felicity's daughter. Overall, this season was pretty great. Ricardo Diaz, of course, returns to be a sort of antagonist within the first season, with the first few episodes, until